Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday, the 1st of September. We do apologise, we're a little late this morning, some technical difficulties, but we're here now. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined by Jonny McFarlane and Joshua Barrie back along with us as well. Joshua, how are we doing?
Okay, still recovered mainly from COVID. Just watched the game back yesterday as I slept through the first helping of it, but yeah, back on my feet, Derek. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, fighting fit. And Jonny is alongside me as well. How's it going, Jonny, on this Wednesday morning?
Well, I'm not fighting fit, having attempted to be the tactical guru in Josh's absence, so nobody's more delighted to see him than me. Believe me.
Right, let's talk about the previous day's events, guys. A pretty quiet transfer deadline day with regards to Rangers. There were some notable outgoings. The first, let's talk about Cedric Itten heading out on loan to Ruther Firth. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not too sure, but to Germany on a loan deal with the option to buy as well. Jonny, were you surprised to see Ced the Ted, as he's affectionately known, head out the door?
I was a bit, I'll be honest with you, just because there'd been virtually no discussion of Cedric Itten's future and because he had a really good pre-season. That said, I think I've made it pretty clear on this video over the last few weeks. I basically my patience with Cedric Itten kind of snapped in the first or second game of the season. Despite his goals in pre-season, I'm just looking at his all-round game and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm not sure about this now. I've seen quite a bit of this guy and he's got quality. He's a good finisher, but I'm not sure he's got the all-round package to really excel in that Rangers team, especially when you compare him to Morelos and Kemar Roof. So I'm not surprised to see him go out on loan. I hope he goes out and does well. Seems like a lovely lad. But I don't genuinely think he's got a future at Ibrox. I don't think he's one that goes out and then comes back and hits the ground running. I just don't think he's quite at the level required. I think it's been a misfire from a transfer point of view, unfortunately.
Yeah, Joshua, you sad to see him go. Could you see him fitting into this Rangers side? I think I'm a bit like Jonny. He's a good player. I think he'll do well somewhere else, but with this Rangers team, it doesn't quite fit for me.
Yeah, I mean, he only started, I think, 3 or 4 games as a central striker last season, and there was a couple. If you remember when he came on against Dundee United away, start of last month, he almost played as a winger for the last 20 minutes, which was a strange tactical instruction to give him. I think the thing with Itten is that he doesn't seem like he obviously wasn't a player that was going to hit the ground running in a sense of he was going to snap at every opportunity. I think he probably needed a little bit of a run in the team. I thought he looked quite good against Malmo away, but the thing is, in that central striker role, I don't think he has the intelligence of Roof to come in, almost plays a false 9 at points and connect play. He doesn't have the robustness and individualism of Morelos, who can do that, but can also carry his team up the pitch. And I think the difficult thing is when you're looking at that position now, you've got 4 players for one role, depending on, I guess, what formation Rangers play with Sakala. Sakala, and if he plays as that central striker role, has obviously the benefit of pace and one-on-one skill set that Itten doesn't have. So, I'd probably tend to agree with Jonny that I don't see him coming back and making a big impact, but he also did score a few important goals last season, and he had a bit of an aerial threat that, why I say Rangers don't have. I guess Roof especially is quite good in the air. What he needs is games, isn't it? And the thing that the Rangers will know is if they want to sell him on even next summer, they're far better doing that with him having had a full season and even getting 10 goals as opposed to having 600 minutes in the Scottish Premiership. So yeah, not on the surface, it doesn't look now like the greatest sign. Maybe as a great summer and comes back next season, but he just didn't seem quite to fit in with the style of play overall, and that's, I guess, the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, Rangers do have that recall option in January, of course. A big hello to Helen getting in touch, and Douglas as well. Douglas says Big Itten never really got the chance, in my opinion. And he says it's good to see we kept support from last season.
Can I come in on that, Derek?
Yeah.
Just on him getting a chance. I get what Douglas is saying there, and I know where he's coming from. However, I think it's quite good, actually, that Rangers are now at a stage where, see, unless you prove how good you are, unless you show it on the pitch, and you need to show it pretty sharpish, and you need to show it in a small amount of time, you're not going to be allowed to be the development player. You know, Morelos, for example, arrived and he went up every season, improving on his skill set, improving on his goals. But Rangers are too good for that now. You know, you're not going to. This is not a place to come and develop your skills and take time to get good. This is a place you need to come and hit the ground running. That was the way it always was with Rangers, and we've seen that with players over the years who just haven't been able to perform at that level, and that's what happens at a big club. You know, coming into the team, taking your time, not scoring any goals, 10 games down the line, starting to get better. That's for St Johnstone and St Mirren and teams like that. That's not for Glasgow Rangers.
Yeah, well, it goes to the Bundesliga, which is obviously one of the best leagues in the planet. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on over there. I'm sure we'll be keeping a keen eye on Cedric Itten. Another player that left Ibrox on loan yesterday was Niko Katic, heading back to his homeland to join Hajduk Split. Looks like a good move on the face of it. Joshua, he's another player that needs game time, and he's joining a big club over there.
Yeah, I wrote about him about 2 weeks ago, and he obviously is someone that the club want to see a long-term future for, but he just obviously, as the obvious thing, needs games after a year and a half out since he last played football. I think his last regular stint of football was during Rangers' bad run before COVID shut down, so it's a long time ago. And I think that the thing is with Katic, he obviously isn't the greatest architect on the ball, but I think that can be developed depending on who his partner is long term. I don't see him being, for example, a long term option instead of Goldson, just because of, you know, I don't think Goldson is by all accounts a modern defender in terms of his ability to play the high line, his ability to sometimes take the ball into midfield, in terms of the odd drag back that he does in ridiculous areas. But Katic is certainly one that, again, there's, even if he doesn't have a long-term future at Rangers, which I think he probably does, there's a resale value in there, and it makes complete sense to send him out on loan when you've got, as we've seen at the weekend, real strength and depth at centre-back. And he can go back and he can go in at 24 now, I think he is. That's a key stage of his career. Again, there's no value for him sitting on the bench playing the odd B team game and getting games in the League Cup. So obviously wish him all the best, and I've no doubt that he'll have a good season over there, because he's got real mental strength, which I think you've seen throughout his Rangers career, and I think that's something that will benefit him if he does want to have a long-term future at the club.
Yeah, good morning to Mandy getting in touch. Glad you're enjoying the programme, Mandy. And Jonathan Holmes says Johnny's ruthless when it comes to Itten. What about Katic, Johnny?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Wait till he hears my opinion on Katic. Listen, Niko Katic is another one I just don't personally think is a good fit for Rangers. I think Niko Katic is a really good defender. Very, very good in the air. Big, physical, robust player. But ultimately, the way this team is shaped and the way this team has evolved is you need a player who can bring the ball out from the back and develop the play. And Rangers are going up against teams who sit into a really deep block and look to defend for their lives in maybe 70% of the games they play. So it's really, really important you have a defender that can progress the ball forward, pass really accurately, pass really well, and start off attacks. And I think fans would get really, really frustrated if that player was Niko Katic quite a lot of the time, because he's not that natural ball-playing defender who can ping one 25 yards. You know, he's fine in terms of the sideways passes and keeping it safe. And as I say, he's a really good defender. But I don't personally think Niko Katic has got a long-term future with Rangers. I know that people won't like to hear that. It's not because I don't think he's a solid player. I just think going forward, in terms of the type of play that we see from the Ibrox club, it's not a good fit, the two sides. But that's not to say he can't go away and improve and prove me wrong, or that he can't go away, have a terrific season and get a big move. We've seen Jack Henry do that. There's a lot of people who wrote off Jack Henry, who was at Celtic, obviously, and then went over to Belgium. And he had a year left in his contract, moved for 1.5 million, and within a short period of time, Oostende have turned that round and sold them for 8 million or something. Yeah. So, players can do that, and you hope that Niko Katic is a guy that can go and turn his career around and come back, because he's a lovely big guy, and I see why fans really, really take to him. But for me, from an analytical point of view, I can't see it.
Yeah, Douglas agrees there. He says Katic's goal against Celtic will always be how I remember the big man. Good luck. And he also says, love Big Niko, but can recover from his serious injury. Hugh's gotten in touch as well. He says it's vital we retain our title financially and straight into the Champions League. Joshua, no real incomings yesterday, and no real big sales. I think every fan sort of expected or was resigned to losing one, if not two, of their big hitters. That has not been the case. Steven Gerrard will be delighted with that, of course. But how do you see the squad as it stands at the minute, heading into this next stage of the season?
Yeah, I'd actually probably give the transfer market an 8 out of 10. I compare stuff with Liverpool a lot because of the obviously natural similarities between the teams. But you look at their window as well, and it's all been about retention. Now, Rangers haven't yet got Kamara on a new contract, for example, but you're right. Champions League money, if Rangers win the league next season, is monumental, is huge, and it would have obviously sped up development this season, but it didn't happen. But if you look at Rangers' window altogether and taking aside the player trading model and what it means, but you have to presume that the club are banking on winning the Premiership and then getting the Champions League money. If you look at that squad, take the midfield, for example. How do you improve that squad, that midfield, in terms of starting 11 without spending more than 10 million or 5 million? Maybe Joey Veerman, maybe there's some exceptions, but in terms of, you look at that midfield on Sunday, was it Sunday? My days are lost. Yeah, Sunday or Wednesday for me. Aribo, Kamara, and Davies. That is a top class midfield. Again, the front three: Roof, Morelos, and Kent. We've spoken about Roof last week, that he's at Rangers. If he was injury free and a little bit quicker, he'd be playing at a much higher level. It's hard to improve that. You look at our fullback options. So I think this was always going to be a summer for Rangers where they gamble a little bit in terms of players like Lundstrom maybe, and Sakala, who would be worth more if they were to be signed. But in Sakala's case specifically, has a lot of raw attributes. You look at, okay, what do? You buy project players. That's what's worked well for Rangers. I know Kent came in for a lot of money, but you look at players like Kent, Hadji, Kamara. These were all players who needed somewhere in their early prime years to go and make a career, as Michael Beale spoke about after the Bacuna signing. So then you look at someone like Bacuna, low risk, high potential. You've retained Geir Kamara, Aribo, Kent, Morelos, and I think it's hard to sniff at. Obviously, the club then, without selling, I don't think could go and spend big money on another attacker, for example. But I think you look at the health of the squad in general. You remember you've got right and Jack Simpson, who came in January, and it looks pretty healthy. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of noise about Rangers' player trading model not working, but in my opinion, the club will look at this COVID depreciated market, maybe not be getting the value they want for the players. Steven Gerrard said 2 weeks ago in his press conference they hadn't had bids. So I think all in all, the people at the club will look at that and think, do you know what, if we not getting the Champions League this year was a setback, but if we can win the league this season, which they'll be confident of doing, get that Champions League money in, get Kamara on another year on his contract, whatever the plan is, then I think that's when the player trading model will kick in, or we'll just speak about it forever and it will never actually happen. But I think all in all, for me, a good summer.
Yeah, Jonny, of course there was the two bids for Nathan Patterson that were not back from Everton, but are you surprised that we didn't see any bids for the likes of Kamara, Morelos, Goldson, Barisic?
I am. I really am, because I think the performance levels of those players in the Europa League especially, but also the Scottish Premiership, would suggest to me that they can all do a very, very good job at a higher level. Glenn Kamara, for me, is an absolute no-brainer. I can't believe that a Premier League team has not come in for Glenn Kamara. I mean, he's just so obviously a class above the level that he's playing at the moment. He deserves to be playing in an elite league. You know, in terms of the Scottish Premiership, I'm talking about when I say that. He's just an absolutely top class player. I mean, Alfredo Morelos is less of the finished article. Brilliant player on his day, but you know, I can see why scouts have doubts. But Glenn Kamara, Ryan Kent, Borna Barisic, these guys are really, really top class players, and it just, for me, it points to this lack of liquidity in the transfer market. We're seeing at the top end Ronaldo and Messi moving and all the rest of it, but that's the elite clubs, the Super League clubs. Underneath that, if you start looking at the kind of moves that are going on, there's not a lot of those sort of £5 to £20 million transfers. The clubs like Porto are pretty quiet. You know, Italian clubs are quite quiet. There's not been much happening because outside of those top leagues or those nation-state clubs like PSG and Man City, there just isn't the money. Having gone through the COVID situation, it's a really difficult one. You know, you mentioned Joey Veerman. Josh, I know that Rangers were interested in Joey Veerman and liked the look of Joey Veerman, but I think that one was going to be, if they made the Champions League, that would be one that they would maybe splash out on, or if they sold a player. But you're just not going to see Rangers splash £8 million in the current financial market. It's just it would be you know, irresponsible to do that. I don't even think Rangers would have went to £8 million, to be honest. But you know, that was the kind of fee that Heerenveen were talking about. So yeah, I think overall, in terms of what has been achieved, I think it's been a really, really good transfer window from a football point of view. You know, they've kept all their best players and they've added Sakala and Lundstrom to that. So in terms of the league, you know, but Celtic have weakened. There's no doubt about that. I mean, anyone who tries to tell you that Odsonne Edouards, Christopher Ajer and Ryan Christie leaving is strengthening them is just that's just not the case. It's not true. You know, those are three terrific players. I think every Rangers fan will probably be quite glad to see the back of those guys. But it's a problem that Rangers are going to find themselves. You know, you develop these players to a certain level and you can't properly replace them because, you know, you can't go out and buy like for like, because that's why they're leaving. It's because, you know, they've reached a ceiling in terms of the Scottish Premier League. And that's something I think going forward that Rangers are going to have to look at quite seriously with this player trading model not achieving a sale this summer. A lot of these players are now going into the last 2 years of their contract. Joe Aribo, Ryan Kent, Glenn Kamara, Alfredo Morelos. In a year's time, they've all got a year left. So if those guys don't sign new deals, that means in a year's time, all four have to be sold, or they go into the sort of the last dregs of their transfer of the transfer window where they're not going to go for much. Look at Ryan Christie. I think the initial reports were 1.2 million for Ryan Christie. Yeah. Now those reports went up to 2.5 million by the end of the day. I don't know what's accurate there, but still, even if it is 2.5 million, that's not a lot of brass for a Scotland international, scored at the highest level, scored in the Champions League, you know, scored in cup finals, 2.5 million. Yeah. That's what happens if you're not managing these contract situations. But ultimately, I think Rangers have been put in a really bad situation. It sounds like what I'm saying is a criticism of Ross Wilson, but it's not really. This is the world that we're living in, this COVID-impacted world, and you know, it's not easy to move players on. It's an art, and it's something Rangers are just going to have to go back to the drawing board or go back to their initial plans and redraw them. But it would be wrong, just for the sake of saying this player trading model is working, to sell a player for less than market value. Like, if Rangers went out, if Rangers had been desperate for money, they would have sold Nathan Patterson for £8 million. Yeah. But everyone in this video would have slaughtered them for selling Nathan Patterson for £8 million. We'd have said, you know, you're massively underselling him. He's going to go for, you know, 30 million in 2 or 3 years' time, or 50 million in 2 or 3 years' time, whatever it is. Because if you're a success down there, you know what it's like. It's exponential growth. And we would all said, yeah, £8 million is selling him massively on the cheap. But then it would have allowed Rangers to tick their boxes. I think the key quote, you know, with this player trading model, and, you know, I think Derek had this in his piece this morning, was from Stuart Robertson at the AGM. He said, we have to really focus over the next 12 months. We know for the business model of the club, we need to start moving 1 or 2 players a year. It won't be a big turnover in the squad, but that is something we need to do and something we're really focused on in the summer. That's the one that's getting a lot of discussion, because he said, that's something we need to do, something we're really focused on, and it's not working. But there's another quote that's getting less sort of discussion, and it's this. It says, it has to he's talking about transfer fees. It has to reflect our valuation, and if that's the case, we'll have a decision to make. But while player trading is an important fourth pillar to our model, we have not got ourselves in a position where we have to sell to validate the model. That's not the case. So I think that's really important to stress that Rangers don't. The player trading model is something they want to do, but they won't be forced into doing it for the sake of doing it. And for someone like Nathan Patterson, who's got the protection of a longer-term contract, they're absolutely right and deserve credit for not being sort of bullied into taking what is undoubtedly a low-ball offer. I mean, I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
No, I do. It's interesting. Bob White's got in touch. He says, Rangers are great on the park, but we clearly need to get better at selling players. Some clubs are selling players for good money with less than 12 months remaining, so we must improve on that. I think I'm like you, Jonny. I'm delighted that the valuable assets that are still at the club. I sort of resigned myself, like everyone, that 1 or 2 would be heading out the door, but Steven Gerrard's retained all of those. I think with the Champions League carrot at the end of this season is certainly one you need to factor in. The Champions League, then it's vital this season. Maybe even, maybe not more so than last season, but in a way it is that you got the riches of the Champions League next season. What say you, Joshua?
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with Jonny in that Rangers need to get better at selling their players. This probably shows that they, in a seemingly counterintuitive way, are, because they're not underselling them. And you look at even Odsonne Edouard going for 15 million wasn't the numbers that he potentially could have gone for, but you still can sell, and Chris Ira was the same, you still can sell a player for good money in the final year of their contract. Obviously, it's been reported a lot that Glenn Kamara is going to sign a new deal. So I'd say it's far too simplistic to say that Rangers wanted to sell players. Rangers have failed, especially in this market. I'd imagine that Rangers have weighed up their options, and the circumstances have changed numerous times this summer, with the Champions League seeming likely, and then obviously getting knocked out. So Rangers on tour, they're saying Rangers know the value of their players, and I think that's probably, if it works, that's being good at selling your players, is not underselling them, selling them at their value. And it's a risk game, isn't it? It's all knowing when the pieces will fall into place, and you just got to trust the people at the club that they are competent, they know what they're doing with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonny,
just on that, Derek, one thing that they've shown over and over again is Rangers have built this squad from nothing. They didn't spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Kent, Morelos, Kamara, all these players we're talking about.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of football, peanuts. And people say Ryan Kent was a big fee. 7 million quid is not a lot of money.
The midfield's what did they pay Aribo? Just a development fee, and then Kamara 50 grand. It's peanuts.
So the transfer system is working absolutely in that sense, right? And people say, need to look at Rangers recruitment and that. But we've all discussed this on this video. The fact is, you don't just bring in a Sakala or a Lundstrom and they just click immediately like that. They have to prove it. It's the same as what I said about Itten. They have to prove that if they come in and prove they're better. And it's not easy to get players who can come in and be as good as the ones that are in this team that qualified for the Europa League 4 times in a row, that have got to the last 16 twice in a row. That is not easy. So I think in terms of the recruitment, Rangers are doing that really well. I think in terms of the development, they're doing that really well. There's 3 elements to this: recruitment, development, and then sales. It's the sales thing that they clearly need to work on. But there's a lot of facets to that, and I'm sure they'll get there. But the important thing, I think Rangers on tour said it, Rangers know the value of their players. We saw that with Alfredo Morelos. 16.5 million was turned down from Lille. And we had Gerard Lopez on a radio show, I think it was Talk Sport, saying we had this bid turned down. And Rangers were right to turn that bid down now, at the time. Maybe not now. Maybe now you would say 16.5 million would be a good amount for Morelos, given COVID's happened. But COVID wasn't around then. You know, it's a completely different marketplace. And Rangers were right to say, no, we're wanting 20 million because that's our valuation. And I think, again, just to reiterate, that's one of the best things about this window, is that we're not having this situation where, and I would put this across Scottish clubs, look at St Johnstone today.
Yeah.
Their fans are in uproar.
Yeah.
Because they've had a double winning season, the most successful season in their club's history. And they've sold their best player, a 21-year-old international, for 1.2 million.
Yeah.
So 2.5 years left on his contract. I mean, that is not good. That is not a good situation, and that is not good value. And Rangers are right to say, we're not going to be the Scottish club that is getting done in by English clubs coming up here and putting pressure on us.
Yeah, not just that. Jason Kerr's went and joined Wigan for next to nothing as well. So yeah, you can see why they're in an uproar. Okay, lads, that'll do us there. Remember to subscribe to the Rangers Review now for only £2.99 a month and support top quality journalism covering the team you love. As Jonny mentioned, we've got an article on the website looking at that transfer model, and lots of great content coming your way. And keep your eyes peeled on our Twitter and our Facebook accounts as well. We'll be back again tomorrow with Thursday's morning briefing, but until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.